Natalie Harper pressed her camera bag against her chest as she moved through the crowded terminal at Los Angeles International Airport. Her heart raced with excitement mixed with nervous energy. Tokyo had been circled on her calendar for 6 months. She and Owen had planned everything down to the smallest detail. The photography opportunities in Japan would be incredible, and she had imagined capturing moments with him by her side, finally cementing their 3-year relationship into something permanent. The overhead speakers announced boarding calls in multiple languages. Travelers rushed past her, some laughing, others checking their phones. Natalie pulled out her device, expecting to see Owen's usual text about running late or grabbing coffee. Instead, her world tilted sideways. The message glowed harsh and cold on her screen. I cannot keep pretending. Don't look for me. We're done. The cruel truth, her fingers trembled as she read the words again, hoping they would rearrange themselves into something else. But they remained the same. Sharp, final, devastating. She lifted her gaze and scanned the terminal. Then she saw him. Owen walked confidently through the crowd, his arm draped around a woman with auburn hair. They moved together like people who had been doing this for a while, comfortable and intimate. The woman laughed at something he said, and Owen kissed her temple. Natalie felt her stomach drop. The airport sounds faded to a dull roar. Her chest tightened until breathing became difficult. All the plans, all the promises, all the late nights talking about their future together dissolved in an instant. She wanted to scream, to run after him and demand answers, but her legs carried her in the opposite direction, away from the humiliation, away from the life she thought she knew. The waiting area she found herself at gate 42, collapsing into a seat near the window. Outside, planes taxied across the runway under the afternoon sun. Inside, families gathered around their luggage. A small boy played with a toy airplane while his parents checked their tickets. A couple leaned against each other, whispering and smiling. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go, someone to go with. Everyone except Natalie. The tears came without permission, hot and relentless. She tried to hide them, turning her face toward the window, but they kept falling. Her entire body shook with the effort of holding in the sobs. She had given Owen everything. Her time, her trust, her dreams. She had reshaped her career around his schedule, turned down assignments to be available when he needed her. And he had discarded her like she meant nothing. Inside her bag, wrapped carefully in silver paper, sat the watch she had bought for him, engraved with their initials, and the words "Forever begins now." The irony felt like a knife twisting in her chest. She pulled it out, staring at the gift that now represented nothing but her own foolishness. An unexpected encounter. Across the waiting area sat Vincent Sterling. Most people would not recognize him without the context of business magazines or financial news segments. But here he was, simply another traveler. His charcoal suit fit perfectly, though his face showed signs of exhaustion that no amount of money could hide. He checked his watch repeatedly, each glance weighted with significance. The doctors had been clear. 8 weeks, maybe 10 if he was lucky. His heart was failing, and no surgery or treatment could reverse what had already begun. He had built an empire, accumulated wealth most people could only imagine, yet none of it mattered now. Time had become his most precious commodity, and it was running out faster than stock prices could climb. He had planned this journey alone, resigned to facing the end without companionship. But then his eyes found Natalie. She sat hunched over, her shoulders shaking with silent grief. There was something raw and honest about her pain that struck him deeply. She was not hiding behind social masks or pretending to be fine. She was simply breaking. And somehow that felt more real than anything he had experienced in years. A bold proposition. Vincent stood and walked toward her, his movements deliberate despite the fatigue pulling at his bones. He lowered himself into the seat beside her. Natalie startled, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "You should not waste tears on someone who does not deserve them," Vincent said quietly. His voice carried authority, but also unexpected gentleness. Natalie wiped her face quickly. "Excuse me? Do you know me?" "No," he replied, meeting her gaze steadily. but I know what it feels like when time runs out on the things that matter." She frowned, confused and defensive. "What are you talking about?" Vincent took a slow breath. "I have 2 months to live, maybe less. I am leaving tonight, and I would rather not do it alone." He paused, letting the words settle. "Come with me." The decision. Natalie stared at him, certain she had misheard. This had to be some cruel joke, another blow from a universe that seemed determined to break her completely. But his eyes held no mockery. Instead, they reflected a gravity that made her believe him despite how insane it sounded. "You cannot be serious," she whispered. Vincent reached into his jacket and withdrew a leather folder. Inside were medical documents, test results, doctor's notes. She recognized enough of the terminology to understand. Terminal heart failure. No viable treatment options. Estimated time remaining. Her hands trembled as she closed the folder. "Ow! Why would you tell a stranger this?" "Why ask me?" "Because," Vincent said softly, "you look like someone who just lost everything." "So did I, in a different way. I have a list of things I want to do before the end. I planned to do them alone, but when I saw you, I thought perhaps we could both use the company." Natalie's mind raced. This was madness. She should walk away, go home, deal with her heartbreak like a normal person. But what was normal about any of this? Owen had destroyed her trust in the life she had built. Going home meant facing an empty apartment and the ghost of failed dreams. At least this stranger was honest about his ending. "What exactly are you asking?" she finally managed. "Come with me tonight. I have a plane waiting. We leave for Tokyo first. Cherry blossoms are blooming. It is on my list." He held her gaze. "You will have your own space, complete independence. No expectations. Just company for whatever time remains." Taking the leap, Natalie looked down at the wrapped watch in her hands. Then she looked back at Vincent Sterling, this dying billionaire who had somehow seen through her pain to offer an escape she never knew she needed. What did she have to lose? Her relationship was already destroyed. Her trip was already ruined. Maybe, just maybe, this insane proposition was exactly what she needed. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "it does not mean I trust you. It only means I have nothing left here worth staying for."
"Oh."
Vincent nodded, something like relief crossing his features. "Fair enough. We leave in 15 minutes. She stood on shaking legs, her camera bag over her shoulder, her broken heart in pieces, and followed him toward the private terminal. Behind her lay the ruins of her old life. Ahead lay the unknown, terrifying and strangely exhilarating. As they walked through the exclusive lounge toward his waiting jet, Natalie realized she had just made the most impulsive decision of her life. And for the first time since reading Owen's message, she felt something other than pain. She felt alive. The private jet touched down in Tokyo as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Natalie had barely slept during the 14-hour flight, her mind churning with questions and doubts. Vincent had remained cordial but respectful of her space, working quietly on his laptop or resting with his eyes closed. She noticed the subtle signs now, that she knew what to look for. The way he pressed his hand against his chest when he thought she was not looking, the medication he took with water at precise intervals, the careful, measured way he moved, as though conserving energy. When they disembarked, the spring air greeted them with a coolness that felt refreshing after the stale cabin atmosphere. A driver waited with a sleek black car, bowing respectfully as Vincent approached. They drove through Tokyo's awakening streets, past neon signs blinking their final hours before daylight claimed the city. Natalie pressed her face against the window. Watching the organized chaos of one of the world's largest cities coming to life, their hotel overlooked a traditional garden where cherry trees stood in full bloom. Petals drifted through the air like snow, creating a scene so beautiful it made Natalie's photographer heart ache. Vincent had reserved separate suites on the same floor, true to his promise. When she entered her room, she found her luggage already waiting, along with a handwritten note on hotel stationery. "Rest today. Tomorrow, we explore. The cherry blossoms wait for no one." The Temple of New Beginnings. The next morning, Vincent knocked on her door, dressed casually in dark jeans and a gray sweater. Without his business attire, he looked younger, more approachable. They took a train to Kyoto, sitting side by side as the landscape transformed from urban sprawl to rolling hills dotted with traditional architecture. Natalie brought her camera, and for the first time in days, she felt the familiar excitement of capturing moments through her lens. Kyoto embraced them with its ancient charm. They visited Kiyomisadera Temple, climbing the wooden steps as monks chanted in the distance. The view from the main hall took Natalie's breath away. Cherry trees blanketed the hillside in clouds of pink and white. She lifted her camera and began shooting, losing herself in angles and light. When she lowered the camera, she found Vincent watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "You come alive when you do that," he observed. She felt her cheeks warm. "Photography has always been my way of making sense of the world. When I look through the lens, everything else fades away." "What do you see when you look at me?" he asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. She studied him properly then, not as a stranger or a dying billionaire, but as a person. She saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes, yes, but also strength. She saw someone carrying an enormous weight with dignity. She saw loneliness that mirrored her own. "I see someone who is still fighting," she finally answered. "Even when you have accepted the end, you are still choosing to live fully. That takes courage I am not sure I have." Vincent smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "You are here, are you not?" That took courage too. Street food and honest conversations. They spent the afternoon wandering through Nishiki Market, a narrow shopping street lined with vendors selling everything from fresh seafood to handmade sweets. The air filled with competing aromas of grilled fish, soy sauce, and something sweet Natalie could not identify. Vincent insisted they try takoyaki from a small stall where an elderly woman worked over a hot griddle. The octopus balls were crispy outside, molten inside, absolutely delicious. Natalie laughed as sauce dripped down her chin. "This is not exactly billionaire food." "The best meals rarely are," Vincent replied, handing her a napkin. "I spent too many years eating in five-star restaurants where the portions were tiny and the pretension was enormous. This is real. This is life." They found a quiet spot along the Kamo River and sat on the bank, watching the water flow past. Vincent pulled out the small notebook she had seen on the plane. He opened it to a page filled with neat handwriting. "My bucket list," he explained. "Things I always meant to do but kept postponing because I thought I had time. See cherry blossoms in Japan. Check. Eat street food in a foreign city. Check." He ran his finger down the page. "Watch the Northern Lights in Iceland. Visit the ancient library in Prague. Learn to make pasta from an Italian grandmother. Kiss someone who matters under the stars." Natalie's heart skipped at that last item, but she kept her voice steady. "How many have you completed?" "Before this trip? None. I was too busy building an empire to actually live in it." His voice carried regret. "Money can buy almost anything except more time. That is the cruelest joke of all." She wanted to offer comfort but did not know how. Instead, she asked, "Why did you choose these particular things?" "Because they are simple, real, the kind of experiences that connect you to being human rather than being successful." He closed the notebook. "I spent my life accumulating wealth and losing myself in the process. Now I want to remember what it feels like to just exist, to feel, to be present for moments that matter." The tea ceremony Vincent had arranged for them to participate in a traditional tea ceremony that evening. They sat on tatami mats in a small room lit by paper lanterns. An elderly tea master moved with practiced grace, each gesture deliberate and meaningful. The ceremony felt like meditation, every action slowed to its essence. The whisking of matcha, the presentation of the bowl, the careful sips taken in silence. Natalie found herself relaxing in ways she had not since before Owen's betrayal. The simplicity of the ritual created space for her mind to quiet. She glanced at Vincent and found him watching the tea master with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every detail, storing it away for the limited time he had left after the ceremony. They walked through a garden illuminated by stone lanterns. The path wound between carefully pruned trees and tranquil ponds. Vincent moved slowly, and Natalie matched his pace without comment. They paused on a wooden bridge arching over dark water. Koi fish glided beneath the surface like living flames. "Thank you for today," Vincent said softly. "For being here? For not treating me like I am already gone?" Natalie turned to face him. "You are not gone. You are right here, right now. That is what matters." Something shifted in his expression. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was feather-light, but sent electricity through her entire body. For a moment, they stood suspended in time, the space between them charged with possibility. Then Vincent pulled back, clearing his throat. "We should return to the hotel. Tomorrow, we fly to Iceland." Journey to the north, the flight to Reykjavik took them over vast stretches of ocean and ice. Natalie slept fitfully, her dreams filled with Vincent's touch on her face. With cherry blossoms falling like tears, with a clock ticking down numbers she could not see. When she woke, Vincent was coughing into a handkerchief, his face pale. He noticed her watching and tried to smile, but the effort cost him. "The altitude affects me more now," he admitted. "Do not worry. I have medication." But Natalie did worry. She was beginning to care about this man in ways that terrified her. It had only been days since Owen destroyed her, yet somehow Vincent had slipped past her defenses. Perhaps because he offered no false promises. He was honest about his limitations, about his ending. There was something freeing in that brutal honesty. Iceland greeted them with stark beauty. Black volcanic beaches stretched beneath gray skies. Geysers erupted with primal force. They drove through landscapes that felt alien and ancient. Vincent had rented a small cottage outside Reykjavik, away from city lights. Perfect for viewing the aurora borealis that first night. They bundled in warm coats and stood in the frozen darkness, scanning the sky. Stars blazed overhead more than Natalie had ever seen. But the northern lights remained hidden behind clouds. Vincent did not seem disappointed. He simply stood beside her, breathing in the cold air, fully present. "Even if we never see them," he said, "this moment is enough. Standing here with you, under these stars, that is a gift." Natalie's throat tightened. She reached for his hand and squeezed it. He squeezed back, and they stood together in the darkness, two broken people finding unexpected solace in each other's company. She realized with sudden clarity that she was falling for him. Not because he was wealthy, or because he had rescued her from the airport, but because of who he was beneath all of that. Kind, thoughtful, brave in the face of impossible odds. And her heart, so recently shattered, was somehow opening again. On their third night in Iceland, the sky finally cooperated. Natalie had dozed off in a chair by the cottage window, when Vincent gently shook her awake. His eyes shone with excitement despite his obvious fatigue. "They are here," he whispered. "Come quickly." She followed him outside into air so cold it stung her lungs. And there, painting the heavens in impossible colors, danced the aurora borealis. Green ribbons undulated across the darkness, shot through with purple and pink. The lights moved like living things, twisting and flowing in a cosmic dance that made Natalie feel incredibly small and wonderfully alive all at once. "Oh," she breathed, tears springing to her eyes. "Vincent, it is magnificent." He stood beside her, his face tilted upward, illuminated by the ethereal glow. "I thought I would die without seeing this. I thought I had missed my chance." His voice cracked. "But here we are." Natalie grabbed her camera from inside and began shooting, trying to capture the impossible beauty. But after a few shots, she lowered the lens. Some moments were meant to be experienced rather than documented. She set the camera aside and simply watched, acutely aware of Vincent's presence beside her. They stood for over an hour as the lights performed their ancient dance. At one point, Vincent's knees buckled slightly, and Natalie caught his arm, steadying him. He leaned on her, and she supported his weight without comment. When the cold finally drove them inside, they sat by the fireplace, warming their hands around mugs of hot chocolate. "Check another item off your list," Natalie said softly. Vincent pulled out the notebook with trembling fingers. He drew a careful line through "Watch the Northern Lights in Iceland." Then he looked at her, his gray eyes intense in the firelight. There is one more item I want to complete tonight. Which one? She asked, though her heart already knew. Kiss someone who matters under the stars. The confession, the words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Natalie's pulse raced. She knew she should protect herself, should maintain distance from a man who had weeks left to live. Falling for Vincent meant signing up for guaranteed heartbreak. But her heart had already made its choice, reckless and wild. "Vincent," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "I am terrified." "So am I," he admitted. "I never meant for this to happen. I invited you as company, nothing more. But Natalie, you have become so much more than that. You see me, not my money or my diagnosis, but me. And I see you too. Your strength, your creativity, your capacity to keep hoping even when hope seems foolish." He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I am dying. I can offer you nothing but heartache and borrowed time. But I also cannot lie about what I feel. These past days with you have meant more to me than entire years of my previous life. You make me want to fight even when I know fighting is futile." Tears streamed down Natalie's face. "I was not supposed to care about you. I was supposed to be healing from Owen, protecting myself. But you have gotten past every defense I have. And yes, it terrifies me, because I know how this ends. I know I am going to lose you." "Then we are both terrified together," Vincent said gently. He cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing away her tears. "But fear should not stop us from taking what happiness we can. Life is too short to waste, and I know that better than anyone." Under the northern lights, they went back outside, wrapped in blankets, and stood beneath the still dancing aurora. The lights had intensified, now streaking the entire sky with color. Vincent pulled Natalie close, and she could feel his heart beating against her chest, irregular, but determined. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it is fast. I know it makes no logical sense. But in the time I have left, I choose truth over caution. I love you, Natalie Harper. You brought me back to life just as mine is ending." She looked up at him, this beautiful, broken man who had somehow become everything to her. "I love you too. Against all reason, against all self-preservation, I love you." He kissed her then, gentle at first, then deeper. The northern lights blazed above them, bearing witness to a love that bloomed in the shadow of death. Natalie poured everything into that kiss, all her fear and hope and desperate need to make every moment count. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and smiling simultaneously. They spent the remaining weeks traveling. Prague's ancient libraries, where Vincent ran his fingers over books older than his family's fortune. A small village in Tuscany, where an Italian grandmother taught them to make pasta from scratch, her wrinkled hands guiding theirs. A quiet beach in Greece, where they watched sunsets paint the Mediterranean in gold. Each day brought new weaknesses for Vincent. His breathing grew more labored, his steps slower, but his spirit remained luminous, fueled by love and determination to experience everything he could. The final days, they returned to Vincent's estate in Northern California as autumn arrived. The doctors had given him days, perhaps a week at most. Vincent refused hospital beds and machines. Instead, he arranged for hospice care at home. In a sunlit room overlooking vineyards and mountains, Natalie barely left his side. She read to him when he was too weak to read himself. She held his hand through the pain. She took photographs of them together, wanting to remember every line of his face, every expression, every moment they had left. On a Tuesday morning, with golden lights streaming through the windows, Vincent squeezed her hand weakly. "Thank you," he whispered. "For saying yes at the airport? For taking a chance on a dying man? For loving me when you had every reason not to?" "Thank you for seeing me," Natalie replied through tears. "For reminding me that I deserve to be chosen. For showing me how to live fully, even in the face of loss." He smiled, that gentle smile she had come to love so deeply. "Promise me something. Promise you will keep traveling, keep creating, keep opening your heart. Do not let my death close you off from life. I promise," she whispered, knowing it would be the hardest promise to keep. Vincent took one last shaky breath, his eyes on her face. "You were my greatest adventure," he said, and then peacefully, he was gone. Moving forward 6 months later, Natalie stood at the airport, boarding pass in hand. She was traveling alone again, but this time by choice rather than circumstance. Her camera bag held not just equipment but Vincent's notebook, which he had left for her with instructions to complete his list for him. She had learned to live with grief. It was not diminishment, but expansion. Loving Vincent had not broken her. It had rebuilt her into someone stronger, someone who understood that the risk of loss was worth the gift of love. She still cried sometimes, missing him with an ache that never fully faded. But she also laughed more freely, loved more openly, and approached each day as the precious gift it was, as the plane lifted into the sky. Natalie pressed her hand against the window and smiled through tears. She was heading to New Zealand to witness the glowworms in the Wadamo Caves. It had been on Vincent's list, one of the items they had not reached in time. But she would see it for both of them, carrying his memory and his love forward into whatever adventures awaited. The woman who had been abandoned at the airport no longer existed. In her place was someone who knew that true love could bloom anywhere, even in the most unexpected circumstances. Someone who understood that endings were inevitable, but that the journey between beginning and end was where life happened. Someone who had been changed forever by a dying billionaire who taught her how to truly live, and as the world spread out beneath her, vast and full of possibility, Natalie Harper embraced the beautiful uncertainty of it all.